Fendi, the Roman craft of power and prestige. Most people think luxury is about money, but when you look closely at Fendi, you discover an uncomfortable truth. True luxury is about power, not price. That's why so many brands try to shine, while Fendi dominates the scene without raising its voice. It's strange to think that a Roman fashion house, born in a modest workshop, learned to build prestige like someone sculpting ancient marble. But it is precisely this paradox that makes its story so fascinating. The quieter Fendi is, the stronger it becomes. And perhaps this is the part that most moves those who pay attention, realizing that some of the world's greatest empires didn't need to shout to exist. On the contrary, they grew because they had such a solid purpose that time couldn't erode it. Fendi did this. It connected tradition, audacity, and an elegance that needs no explanation. And in a way, this journey also reveals something about us. How many times do we try to prove our worth when, in fact, we should simply build it? Fendi's impact goes far beyond clothes and bags. It shows us that true power is born in the invisible, in the details, in silent choices, in the courage to honor one's own history. And that's why, if you truly want to understand how prestige is created, you need to follow this narrative to the end. Because each chapter reveals a code, a key, a hidden piece of this Roman puzzle that continues to shape the future of luxury. So get ready, because what you're about to discover may change the way you see power, influence, and authenticity. The streets of Rome that shaped an empire. The streets of Rome have always taught more than they seem to say. Those who walked those ancient stones felt that each corner held a whisper of power, a silent reminder that greatness is not improvised, it is built. And it was precisely this air of natural authority that shaped Fendi's DNA. The brand was born observing the city, absorbing that Roman spirit, that blends strength, beauty, and prestige, as if they were one. It's as if each step taken there said, "Create something worthy of eternity." Rome has this rare ability to make anyone reflect on legacy. Those who walk through the Colosseum realize that it's not just ruins, but a living lesson in resilience, influence, and craftsmanship pushed to the limit. Fendi understood early on that this was the kind of greatness it should pursue. Greatness that survives centuries, not just seasons. And this didn't happen by chance. It came from observing the discipline, the audacity, and the striking aesthetic that Rome exudes without needing to raise its voice. It is from this energy that the essence of the brand is born. And, interestingly, Rome teaches something that many people forget. True luxury isn't in the glitz, but in the history behind the glitz. Fendi's workshops began with this mentality, to create something that resonated with the soul of the city, with its quiet grandeur. A practical lesson from this, for example, is to look at one's own life seeking references that elevate one's perspective. Visiting museums, observing architecture, reading authors like Robert Hughes, or studying the Roman Renaissance. All of this expands one's repertoire, just as Rome expanded Fendi's. And that's where the story begins to connect with something even greater. The 5 Fendi sisters and the birth of a feminine legacy. The 5 Fendi sisters grew up surrounded by thread, leather, and the unmistakable scent of a handcrafted workshop. But what truly shaped their legacy was the courage to think differently when no one else dared to take risks. Each brought a distinct strength, creativity, vision, strategy, intuition, and discipline. And together, they functioned like a perfect machine, where one strengthened the other. They didn't just run a business, they created an empire driven by purpose and passion. It was the power of the feminine elevating luxury to another level. The interesting thing is that, at that time, 5 women leading a fashion house wasn't just rare. It was provocative. They faced disapproving glances, doubts, and a society that always underestimated women's ability to lead with firmness and sophistication. And yet they transformed a small atelier into a house of international prestige. This shows something that applies to anyone today. When purpose meets persistence, even the impossible begins to seem obvious. It's almost as if they intuited that Rome demanded greatness, and they delivered exactly that. One of the greatest lessons the Fendi sisters leave us with is about complementarity. Many people try to succeed alone, but they don't realize that great empires are built by talents that combine. If someone wants to apply this in practice, they can start by mapping their own strengths and seeking out people who complement what's missing, whether for a business, a creative project, or even personal change. The sisters were like that. Each skill created a layer of power. And it is precisely in this scenario of unity and innovation that the figure who would change everything emerges. The encounter with Karl Lagerfeld that redefined the impossible. When Karl Lagerfeld joined Fendi, it wasn't just the arrival of a designer, it was as if a creative lightning bolt struck Rome. The Fendi sisters had vision, but Karl brought an almost indomitable audacity, that spark that transforms good ideas into revolutions. He saw the future before the world even imagined it was possible, and this union between tradition and rupture created a new kind of luxury, where respect for the classics walked hand in hand with the desire to break rules. It was like watching history being written before your eyes. Karl had a peculiar way of working. He didn't ask why, but rather, what if? This simple shift in perspective is powerful, and anyone can apply it to their daily lives. Instead of thinking it's not possible, ask yourself, what if I tried it this way? He transformed materials, reinvented techniques, and brought irreverence to what was considered untouchable. Fendi ceased to be just a Roman maison and became a global symbol of boundless creativity. And, in the process, he proved that tradition doesn't have to be synonymous with rigidity. The encounter between Karl and Fendi created a kind of alchemy. He expanded the brand's universe, opened doors, redefined codes, and placed the house ahead of its time. If someone wants to apply this mentality to everyday life, they can start by seeking references outside their own bubble. Classic films, art books, biographies of innovators like Steve Jobs or Coco Chanel. It was this movement, looking beyond, that made Karl see in Fendi a fertile ground for the impossible. And it is precisely in this phase that the brand begins its boldest transformation. The era of fur, leather, and craftsmanship as symbols of power. Fendi has always known that true power lies in the details that almost no one sees, but everyone feels. When the Maison began to master working with leather, it wasn't just a matter of technique. It was a silent manifesto of authority. Roman craftsmanship, already known for its precision, gained a new meaning within the brand. Each stitch was a signature, each texture an affirmation of prestige. And this transformed Fendi into a symbol of absolute excellence, where touch was worth more than 1,000 words. Back then, working with these materials demanded more than skill. It required patience, discipline, and an almost sacred respect for the process. Fendi's artisans didn't create products, they created legacies. It's like someone who decides to learn a craft from scratch today, carpentry, ceramics, embroidery, and discovers that when we make something with our own hands, we develop a deep relationship with the creation. Fendi understood this early on, and this understanding gave the brand a unique edge that no trend could overcome. Mastering these materials also taught something essential. Luxury lies not in the material itself, but in its transformation. Just as a block of marble only becomes a masterpiece in the hands of someone who knows what they are doing, Fendi showed the world that power is born from the combination of technique and vision. Those who wish to apply this mindset today can invest in developing rare skills. From learning about aesthetic curation to studying contemporary craftsmanship in books such as The Craftsman by Richard Sennett. And it was this relentless pursuit of mastery that paved the way for the creation of pieces that would become true legends. The construction of the myth, iconic items that became global status symbols. Fendi has always had an almost supernatural talent for transforming objects into symbols, and the baguette is the greatest example of this. It wasn't just a bag, it was an attitude, a gesture of someone who carries power naturally, without needing to make a fuss. When it appeared, in pop culture, especially in series like Sex and the City, the item ceased to be an accessory and became an identity. It's incredible how certain items take on a life of their own, as if they hold a story that continues to be written by those who use them. This is the kind of luxury that transcends fashion and enters the culture. Then came Peekaboo, which seemed simple at first glance, but carried a discreet audacity, showing the interior, something that, in the world of luxury, has always been hidden. This idea of elegant vulnerability speaks directly to real life. Sometimes, what you subtly reveal is worth more than any speech. It's the kind of piece that teaches that power can be silent, but never goes unnoticed. And, if someone wants to apply this concept in practice, they just need to observe which details of their own life could be refined with authenticity, whether in the way they dress, communicate, or even organize their routine. And of course, there's Celeraya with its hand-stitched saddle stitch, which looks more like stitched poetry. It's a reminder that, ultimately, what makes something valuable isn't just the price, but the invisible work behind it. It's like investing in something that grows over time. A good course, a craft skill, a mind-expanding book, like Luxury Strategy from Kapferer. Celeraya taught the world that tradition and innovation can go hand in hand. And this vision, moreover, becomes even clearer when Fendi decides to transform the city itself into a stage. Rome as a stage, when the city becomes the world's largest catwalk. When Fendi decided to transform Rome into its runway, it didn't just put on a show, it created a manifesto. The show at the Trevi Fountain, for example, wasn't designed to impress, but to immortalize. Models literally walked on water, as if the entire city had surrendered its power to frame the collection. And this confirmed something Fendi always knew. Rome is not just a backdrop, it's a protagonist. It's the silent force that sustains everything the Maison creates. This kind of boldness teaches a valuable lesson. When you honor your roots, the whole world notices. Fendi understood that it didn't need to chase trends, it simply needed to amplify what Rome has always offered. It's like someone who decides to invest time in their own history, revisiting memories, skills, and even family traditions. Sometimes, the greatest innovation is born precisely from what seemed commonplace. Therefore, observing your own emotional territory can reveal more power than any modern tool. And the truth is that using an entire city as a catwalk requires courage, vision, and almost unwavering conviction. Fendi did this because it deeply believed in its own worth. And if someone wants to apply this mentality to everyday life, they can start by choosing a stage that represents their identity, an organized office with its own aesthetic, a work desk that inspires, an environment that tells its story. It was this understanding, that setting influences power, that led the brand to its most audacious rebirth in the hands of an essential figure. The modern Renaissance, Silvia Venturini Fendi, and the new power of the brand. Silvia Venturini Fendi took on the brand as one receives an entire city in one's hands, with responsibility, reverence, and at the same time, a fierce desire to reinvent its destiny. She did not try to erase the legacy of previous generations. On the contrary, she expanded it, with an almost strategic creative intelligence. She understood that luxury needed to engage with the present without losing the majesty of the past. And it is precisely this rare ability to balance tradition and modernity that has made Fendi reborn with even greater strength. Sylvia brought to the Maison a sensibility that seemed to be lacking in the contemporary world. The ability to create pieces that resonated with real life, but without sacrificing an aura of prestige. She understood that the modern public seeks subtle power, elegant functionality, and inspiring design. Proof of this is the peekaboo, which has become a symbol of sophisticated autonomy. It's like someone deciding to update their own identity. They don't need to abandon what worked, only refine, reorganize, and bring freshness to what already exists. Sylvia did exactly that, but on a global scale. And what's most interesting is that she conducted this transformation with a strategic, almost silent calm, which shows that true authority doesn't need to shout. Anyone who wants to incorporate a bit of this mentality can start by applying small acts of conscious renewal, adjusting their routine, reorganizing their environment, creating a coherent personal style, even investing in modern references such as The Power of Style or studies on Italian design. Sylvia proved that innovation is not a complete rupture, it's natural evolution. And it was precisely this philosophy that paved the way for understanding what truly differentiates Fendi in communicating luxury. Silent power. Why Fendi doesn't shout luxury? It imposes it. Fendi has discovered something few brands understand. True luxury doesn't need to be ostentatious. It imposes itself naturally, like the presence of someone who enters a room and, without saying a word, commands respect. That is the silent power of Fendi. Its pieces don't carry exaggerated logos or scream for attention. They murmur elegance, and those who understand recognize it. It's the kind of prestige that doesn't need external validation because it was born with authority. This concept offers a valuable lesson for anyone. True power lies not in noise, but in consistency. It's like someone who doesn't need to respond to attacks, doesn't need to prove anything, because the results speak for themselves. Fendi operates on this frequency: discreet, strategic, refined. If someone wants to apply this to their daily life, they can start by reducing excesses. Less ostentation, more subtlety. Less talk, more action. Less need to impress, more focus on building something solid. This creates a type of presence that is felt, not displayed. And what's most fascinating is that this silence is never empty. On the contrary, it's a language, an aesthetic, a calculated positioning that attracts the right eyes. Fendi speaks to those who value depth, heritage, and substance, not just fleeting brilliance. This type of communication is so powerful that it effortlessly shapes perceptions. And it is at this point that we arrive at the brand's current phase, where tradition, innovation, and cultural influence meet to project the future of luxury. Fendi today. The future of luxury, tradition, and cultural influence. Fendi has arrived in the present with a rare stance in the world of luxury. It doesn't try to compete. It sets the pace. Today, the Maison combines technology, sustainability, and craftsmanship in an almost surgical way, proving that tradition doesn't need to be rigid. It's impressive to observe how the brand manages to preserve the Roman spirit while reinventing itself for a world that changes at an absurd speed. And it is precisely this blend of past and future that keeps Fendi at the top of global prestige. What's most interesting is how Fendi has managed to occupy new cultural territories. Collaborations with artists, architectural interventions, monumental fashion shows, and a strategic presence in film and music have transformed the brand into something bigger than just products. Today, it's a symbol of sophisticated identity. Anyone wanting to apply some of this to their own life can start by studying trends and consuming curated content such as The Business of Fashion or by analyzing contemporary cultural movements. The more connected you are to the world, the more relevant you become. Exactly as Fendi does. Looking to the future, it's clear that Fendi will continue down the path that has always guided it. Quiet, authority, calculated innovation, aesthetics that speak to the soul, and a deep respect for its roots. This is the kind of alignment anyone can strive for, uniting past, present, and future in a coherent narrative. After all, when tradition and vision come together, no limits remain. And it is precisely this intersection that prepares us for the next stage of our journey. After walking through Fendi's history, it's impossible not to notice one thing. Power isn't something you flaunt. It's something you build silently, every day. Fendi never needed to raise its voice to dominate the luxury world, and perhaps that's the most valuable lesson here. So I ask you, where in your life are you trying to prove something, when in fact you should simply be becoming something greater? What details are you ignoring that could completely change your presence in the world? Furthermore, what have you been neglecting because you think it doesn't make a difference? Fendi shows us that it's precisely what no one sees that builds what everyone admires. Isn't it time for you to start refining your story, your choices, your environments, your references? What would happen if you treated your own life like an artisan treats their masterpiece, with patience, intention, and respect for the process? Perhaps your next great leap lies in that silence you've never explored. Now tell me, are you ready to apply these codes of power, prestige, and presence that Fendi masters so effectively? Because if you are, this is just the beginning. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and stay with me, because here you'll learn, step by step, how to build a life that doesn't need to shout to be noticed. It simply commands respect.